All right. And yeah, today we're here to talk a little bit more around Alteryx. So the agenda for today is just going to be an introduction on Decision Inc. We're going to run through what Alteryx is, why you use it, the benefits of it, what makes the product different to its competitors. We'll have a quick look at an industry view and where you can use it within various industries, and then we'll head off to a practical demo. Information is at the heart of what we do, and we generally help clients build their information foundation. So we look at whether their data is pure and organized, and we help them out with their data management. We also come with some key insights per industry and help them answer the burning questions. On the experience side, we've got a fairly sophisticated business intelligence house, which we actually help our clients experience data much better. And on the adoption front, we've got a big drive to ensure that end users actually adopt our products very well. And I think that makes us quite distinctive within the market to see that we're able to deliver effective technology solutions, which actually changes businesses. Okay, so just from an overview perspective, like I mentioned, we help clients with information strategy, we do technology consulting, and we've got a strong analytics capability, and that's where Alteryx generally comes in. We also do this across multiple industries and across multiple technologies. So for today's focus, we'll be focusing on our Alteryx capabilities. Yeah. All right, so what is Alteryx? Okay, maybe before we head on, there's a little chat window, and if you guys have any questions, please just pop them over on the chat. Just remember to change your chat setting to, I think it's all participants. Yeah, I think, yeah, just make sure that you're on the all participants drop down. And yeah, so as we go along, if you have any questions, then pop them up over there. We'll also give a session for questions afterwards. All right, so let's head on the Alteryx front. So I think the key message which Alteryx wants to bring to life is it's deeper insights within hours, not weeks. So we all generally play within the data environment. We know what efforts involved in terms of collecting information, actually slicing it, blending it, and then visualizing it, and then actually sitting down and analyzing the information in front of you. So Alteryx is a tool which really helps you shorten that space of time and focuses on usability. All right, so it's an analytics platform, and it truly is end-to-end. So with Alteryx, you can discover and share information, you can prep and blend information, analyze and model it, and deploy and manage it. And I think the strength behind this is that usually you will find tools which have elements of this, but not all of this within one. So on the discover side and the collection side, you'll have some or other DB, which is hosting the information, and the ETL, which loads it into some form of a warehouse. When you analyze and model it, we use various softwares there, either you're using R, SAS, maybe just basics on SQL, and how we actually deploy that, whether that might be through a visualization tool or through reports, and how we actually manage that information. Alteryx also hosts a strong community, and it embeds a data and analytics cultures within organizations. So organizations start maturing more on the data analytics front, and they start behaving more analytically. Yeah. So why Alteryx? So like I mentioned, traditional BI solutions, they're simple, but they're limited. And then on the other side, we have enterprise analytics solutions, which are quite complex and costly. And I think the message on Alteryx is that they really have a consumer-ready product. It's the rapid development which really catches clients on it, and the connection to various sources. So I think they've put a lot of effort to make sure that they can connect to quite a wide range of different sources. Benefits on Alteryx. So, like I mentioned, we'll get to the designer view within the demo, but you guys will see that its drag and drop functionality is very simple. It's got a repeatable workflow, and I feel generally this is quite a challenge within the analytics environment. Someone will go off and do a piece of analysis and do it as an ad hoc exercise, and then when you actually want to schedule and run it, it becomes a different animal to actually manage it. So the repeatable workflow is quite a powerful tool. Like I mentioned before, connecting to the various sources is awesome. And then it's customized, its scheduling capabilities and publishing ease of use is also quite powerful. All right, so let's have a look at the different elements within the product. So Alteryx cut themselves up in terms of a designer, a gallery, and a server. And as part of the designer version, which we'll have the demo on, that's where you can actually prep and blend the information, run various analysis within, whether you want to integrate with an R or a Python. On the gallery side, and on the designer side, this is all desktop based. So you can get a free trial license on the designer side and run that for a 14-day period. And that's generally what we recommend to clients if they want to engage with Alteryx. This is the best way. Just pop onto the site, download the trial, and start playing with it. There's some really powerful tutorials as well, but finally, hopefully we get you guys hooked on it during the session. Then the big difference between the designer and the gallery, Alteryx does not allow for scheduling within the designer, but this will still be based on the desktop itself. So you'll be able to run and schedule workflows if you have the gallery version, which is quite handy, whereas the designer version does not allow for scheduling. So you just need to run that whenever the analysis is needed. On the server side, that's their enterprise solutions. So then it really comes with all the bells and whistles. So then you have an environment where you can actually schedule all your workflows, you can manage it, so the governance on your data and the visibility is great. It also allows you to create different workflows, share it with peers. Yeah, and I think that's the big, and obviously the server version is scalable as well, depending on the amount of data you want to run on it. All right, so that's more on the product. I've not seen any questions yet on the chat. If you have, remember, if you have any, please feel free just to pop them on there, and then we'll address them as we run through it. So I'm going to hand over to Leandra now, who's going to quickly walk you through the demo.
Okay, hi everybody. So I'm just going to take you through a few quick examples in Alteryx to show you just how easy it is to use and some of the analytical capabilities that it offers. The first thing I'm going to do is actually use one of their inbuilt tutorials to show you that this is how many tutorials come with Alteryx and how quick it is to get started and get using Alteryx from the get-go. So in this tutorial, we're going to do some blending of data. And the nice thing with the tutorials is that they actually show you exactly where the tools need to go and they guide you through the complete setup. So I'm going to follow this tutorial by firstly dragging one of my input data tools straight into the workflow like that. And I'm going to follow the instructions here, which are telling me to locate a file, which is in the sample data, and it's a file called transactions. So I'm just going to locate that file, double click it. The next step of the tutorial then asked me to drag in a select tool. So now I can move over to my preparation tab. That's where I'll find my select tool. And again, I just drag that into the workflow. And here the instructions is just telling me I can change types using the select tool. So in this case, we want to change the data type of the sales column to a double. Next thing is I now want to drag in a different source of input data. So my initial data was an XML file. I'm now going to drag in a CSV file called customers. So I've now selected that file, and what I now want to do is actually join the data together. So I'm going to drag in a join tool. And if it hasn't done the connection for me, I just need to drag the connection across like that. So that's telling me my left input is coming from my transactions file, my right input is coming from my customers file. And setting up the join is as simple as saying on the left, the field I wanted to use is customer ID, and the right, that should connect to customer ID. And then finally, we're just going to do a quick summary of the data. So I can add a summarize tool. And what I'm going to do is under the customer segment, let's just find that field here. I'm going to add a group by. So that's now going to group my data according to my different customer segments, which were in the data. And I'm then also going to add a sum of my sales. So I take my sales field and I add a sum. And now running the workflow is as simple as pressing run, processes the data, and now we have an output. And I can see from my output that it's summarizing my data according to different customers, and it's giving me a total sales value. So here what I've done is I've taken two different sources of data, one with the customer details and then one with the transactions, and I've managed to join them in just a few minutes and output the sum of sales per segment. And just as an example, if we were to write the SQL code from scratch, this could be up to 100 lines worth of SQL code and could take half an hour to an hour to write, whereas this has taken us just a few minutes. So that clearly shows the potential of Alteryx to very quickly blend data. Right, a second example I'm going to work through, and I won't drag and drop again, as now I think everyone is seeing that functionality. So this one I have set up already. Again, this is one of the tutorials that came with Alteryx, but all I've done at the end is just added a few steps. So what this tutorial is doing is, again, taking some input data, and it's tiling the data, so in other words, grouping it. Firstly, according to, in this case, how many visits a customer had, and it's then tiling it again according to the value of their spend. And then lastly, we're just doing a summary, and so that we can output some graphs. And then I've also emailed a version of one of the graphs to myself. So if we run that,
and then maybe in the meantime, let's just run through a customer segmentation example. So, I mean, the effort involved traditionally in doing a customer segmentation would be, you know, you would collect source information from various sources, whether that might be your CRM, some operational data from your ERP, and maybe if you even want to have a marketing view, to collect some social media. Traditionally, we'd have to build quite a complex ETL to get that into some sort of a warehouse environment. And then even once it's in the warehouse environment, we'd have to blend and segment the information within there. So the effort involved there would probably be quite a lot of SQL scripting to blend and cut your data. And then as well, maybe exporting to, once you have a good data set, export that into R, write a few scripts in R, and actually push that back into your warehouse environment, and then actually push that towards a final view to be able to be surfaced in a visualization tool. So the effort involved in this means that there's various technologies involved. You might not have in-house the skills to develop on each of these technologies, or if you have, you are quite lucky. And then it depends on the level of skill as well, which you have in-house. Whereas in Alteryx, this is a simple customer segmentation example. And I mean, this workflow can be built within a few hours, and then you can actually start testing your data within your visualization tool. So this is quite a good example where you have the tiling options, and then you create multiple joins, and then you actually surface the information within an output Tableau file. So Tableau can pick up that file, read it, and then you can start visualizing from there. So the whole prep and blend of your data, the timing of that is cut down quite significantly. Let's maybe head back to our email example and see if we've managed to send that yet.
So it looks like it has come through. I'm just going to rerun it, see if we can see it coming through live. All right, so it should pop up now. So just to see what we've done here is we summarized the data and we said how many of the customers were high value. In other words, they were classified both in terms of high spend by the tiling tool and also high value. And in this case, it gave us 51 high value clients and 2,618 low value clients. So in this case, more low value than high value clients. But that can be useful for then determining which are those high value clients so that you can specifically target those. And here we can see my emails just come through, and it sent me just a very basic graph, how many high value versus how many low value customers. And then obviously the analysis can be taken further from there to say which are the high value and which are the low value customers. All right, and then I'm going to move on to a more analytical example. So this is to show some of the really advanced capabilities of Alteryx. And we'll probably only just touch on some of the things that Alteryx can do in this demo. There's obviously a wide range of things that Alteryx can do far beyond this. But just as an example, we're going to do a quick forecasting. Another nice thing about Alteryx, which I've done in this workflow, is that you can really separate your components into different sections. So I've classed my different sections into data preparation, creating the forecasts, sending an output, and then also comparing my results of my forecast to the actual data. And that's really nice because if someone else needs to use this workflow, they can quickly see what I was doing. I've also described what each tool was doing so they can know what was happening. And in that way, I don't need to create as much documentation as I would for a set of SQL code, for example. So basically what's happening here, I am preparing my data. So I'm just choosing the data that I want to run my forecast on. In this case, I'm also summing my sales data per month because I have daily sales and I just want to do a monthly forecast. I'm then splitting my data according to dates, and I'm saying that everything that's prior to the year 2017 is what we're going to run the actual forecast on, and everything after 2017 is what we're going to use to compare the results of our forecast to the actual data. Within the creating forecast section, I'm now actually doing the forecast. So I've chosen two different models within Alteryx. The one is an ETS model and the one is an ARIMA model. And they are very simple to set up. There are a few customization parameters on the side here, which you can play with. That is optional. So obviously the standard process is to run them according to the default. But should you wish to play with the components in more detail, you can do that using the parameters on the left. So I've created two models, and then from those two models, I then create 12 monthly forecasts. I'm then feeding those two forecasts back to my original data for the year 2017, and then using this tool in Alteryx to actually compare the two forecasts. So instead of just running a forecast, I want to be able to run two and determine which is the better model, and then use that going forward. And then lastly, in my output block, I'm basically just setting up the data in the format I want to output it. In this case, I'm writing it to a CSV, but that's just one of the many formats that we can output data to in Alteryx. And I'm also just creating a quick report of the ETS model, and again, sending that via email to myself. So if we quickly run that. And again, what's quite nice, we can see the progress. So this also helps for determining which elements of the model are taking a long time. Obviously, the more analytical components will generally take longer, so we can see that that's taking up the bulk of the time. And then we can just wait until it's completed. All right, so that's completed now. So what we can see now, if we look in our results panel, in the output of that, we can actually, typically we look at the root mean square error and we use that to determine which model has performed the best. In this case, we can see the ETS had a much lower error rate than the ARIMA model. So then typically our next steps would be to take that ETS model forward and use it to forecast into the future. I've also then just created a layout report, which comes from our model. And that's just come through to me now. So in this case, I've sent it through as an HTML just to show again one of the various formats we can use in Alteryx. And this is quite nice because it gives me a very analytical breakdown of the forecast. So I can now see what my input data was into the ETS, the typical trend line in terms of whether the data is increasing or decreasing over time, and then the seasonality. Obviously, if the data is very highly seasonal, you'll see a very similar frequency here. And then you can see the error and the output that it's given from the forecast. So that's a really great example of one of the more analytical things that can be done with Alteryx. Something else that's really nice is using these analytical tools for a much bigger workflow. So say, for example, we want to forecast for multiple products instead of just one. Alteryx allows us to create a macro to do that. So I won't run through this now because obviously it would take time to run through a large set of data. But just to show you, you can create a macro which basically does exactly as our forecasting workflow had done. But what it now does is takes through an input, and it's then going to iterate through a particular control parameter. So in this case, I might tell it to iterate through various products, and it can then run the same forecast over and over again. And in this case, I'm actually saving it directly to a database. So I can then start this workflow in the background, continue with my other work, and come back in a few hours to check my results in my database.
I think this is extremely useful as generally when engaging with softwares like R and Python, and when trying to converge them with large data sets in SQL, we do find it quite a challenge for the more analytical softwares to actually consume that volume of data. So that functionality, I think, is quite useful in terms of just looping a particular calculation.
Exactly. And then what we can do is take those macros and put them in as black boxes. So I can have my entire workflow that does all my data preparation. I've just dropped my forecast in as a black box. So that doesn't need to give visibility to the entire process, and it also simplifies my workflow. So that's the really nice thing about macros. And then the last thing I just want to show you is a quick example of where we've actually output some forecasting data and we're now using it in a click view model. So this, for example, is a dashboard of some claims data. And we had some claims data for 2013 and 2014. We used Alteryx to create a forecast for 2015. And we've output that as a CSV file, which we've included as an extra input into our click view model. And here we're able to visualize it. So ultimately, that's where we want to go. We want to use Alteryx to do all of our processing, our analytics, and then we want to display it somewhere. So we can easily output that display into a file that ClickView can read. It can also be output into a QVD. So ClickSense and ClickView can both interpret it. And similarly, it can be output into a Tableau workset. So that can be combined with various other analytics features in this case, so we can display a nice summary of our data.
That's great. And I mean, really, if you look at the designer and how the workflows are developed and visualized, I think this cuts down development time drastically. It really makes your analysis much more transparent to anybody else who's picking it up or digging with inside of it. If you've got the server version and you're scheduling these jobs as well, it gives you good visibility in terms of which workflows are actually running and completing. So on the ETL front, it's quite, it does very much compete against the best in the market. But then on the analytics front, that's truly where Alteryx outperforms its competitors. If we look at some of the industry applications of Alteryx, and there's many more. I mean, we only picked a few here, which were specific to mining and manufacturing, where you can actually use Alteryx to explore more informed decisions, whether that is to explore a new area where you want to mine, whether you want to anticipate outages, or whether you want to maximize your labor time. I know Alteryx is also quite useful for your predictive maintenance. That's more on the manufacturing side. On the insurance side, it's quite powerful in terms of calculating policy risks, predicting future claims, and optimizing price policies. And on the retail side, it speaks to quite a lot of areas within supply chain, marketing, and operations. So it's quite a versatile tool, and I think definitely you can use it as far as your imagination stretches. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, please just remember to pop them up on the chat. I think for next steps, if you guys want to engage within Alteryx, I think the best way of actually engaging is downloading the designer version. It's got a 14-day trial on it, and then actually start playing with it. Generally, when we do engage with clients on Alteryx, this is the best way to start and drive adoption, is to get them going on it, let them actually experience the power of Alteryx. And it's usually them who call us afterwards saying that they're interested in more licenses and potentially the server version. So I would recommend downloading the trial version as well. If you really want to engage or want to introduce Alteryx to a wider audience within your organization, we also facilitate Alteryx workshops where we demo Alteryx, we show you basically what the tool looks like, and we introduce you to it. And then also we take you through an actual workshop where we let you download the software, take you through a few practical examples. And even if you want to have a more engaging session, we can even arrange that we do this on your own information set. But yeah, guys, I think that is kind of what we wanted to run through in terms of Alteryx. It's quite a powerful tool, and we're very excited of our partnership with Alteryx.